Welcome, everyone. This is Pilot Niels, and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at latest news in LOTRO and hear LOTRO players. And this week, I am joined by Cinders.
Hi!
Hello, Cinders. You're there, right?
Yes, I am there. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yes. I didn't hear much of a response to
I
you
said,
before.
hi!
All right. Let's get into our news this week, and it's a very, very light news week, but the Staying Stone Games did announce that next week they are planning to release Update 40 for Lord of the Rings Online, which will include the new underground area and continue along with the story of the Song of Waves and Wind.
Applause! Okay.
And this is going to also include a couple of nice little things. We'll go over all the release notes next week. And on top of that, they'll also be starting Season 10 for the legendary rewards track, which is to start on Wednesday, May 15th. So obviously that means Update 40 will have to be released before that time. If Update 40 gets delayed, then the season will also get delayed. And we are also expecting a new supporter pack to come out next week.
Ooh. Do we know anything about it yet?
I think he gave a slight hint to it, but I can't remember a thing about it. It might just be that he's excited about it or something like that when Cordovan was talking about it. So I don't know if he gave an actual hint or anything like that. So I'm wondering, is it going to be related to maybe the next expansion? Or maybe if they want to get Sans really excited about, maybe there'll be a Moomak mount or something.
Ooh.
I'm just making that up, although.
Yeah. It's worth dreaming, though.
It is worth dreaming. I'm sure that Sans is hoping for a Moomak mount on that, because usually there is going to be a mount of some sort in it, and there's usually, of course, a bunch of cosmetics.
I would settle for Shire Plum Dye for War Steeds.
I suggest you don't bet all your money on that.
I'll survive.
Okay, you'll survive. All right. So that's all the news that we have this week. That there's an update next week, that there'll be having a new legendary rewards track on there. I have not had a chance to get a glimpse as to what's on that yet, because I could never really get into Bulwer to check that out. I was hoping there would be another Bulwer build this week, but there wasn't one. So I guess they're just taking care of the last few things on internally and getting all ready for shipping next week.
Sounds good.
And sounds good. We'll see how that works. And maybe next week I could report on how wonderful the next section is. But while we cannot go into too much about what's coming up next week, we can give you the store sales for this week. And Cinders, what's on sale?
You may unleash your potential and get 20% off of loot box keys, universal solvents, universal morale and power potions, and deed boosts through May 16th. And the weekly coupon is for free regeneration food times 5 with coupon code Good Food No Spaces. Now through May 16th as well.
Good food.
Mm-hmm. Or
But
I should say,
don't you get crammed?
Mm-mm.
All right. Let's now look at our new player question for this week. And what's the question this week?
The question this week. Where is the best place to fish? I hear you've been doing some research into that, Pine Leaf, and what have you concluded?
Well, I have been fishing all over Middle Earth in order to get a answer on this thing. And of course, the reason I did all this search for fishing was because we have all those recipes that require fishing. So when I'm talking about the best place to fish, I am going to be talking mainly about from the point of view of catching those fish that can be turned into fillets so that they can use them in the Gundabad and Umbari recipes.
Oh.
And one of the things I did is I went through every area I could think of in order to fish in there. And the first thing I noticed in there is that there is a very distinct division in two separate types of areas that we have in the game. Those that are before Mordor and the ones that are after Mordor. And
Mm-hmm.
in case you're wondering, Mordor itself is the single worst place to fish because there are no fish caught in Mordor. I know, what a shock, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, who would have expected that there'd be no fish in Mordor? Yeah. Well, I think it was Faramir who warned
I don't.
Frodo and Sam about, how bad the waters are in
Yeah.
Mordor. Yeah. So what I found then is that in the post Mordor, okay, that's so Mordor, no fish at all. In the places you go to after Mordor in your travels, there tends to be a stronger emphasis on deed fishing than there is on food fishing. As a result of this, much of the fish that you could potentially catch for food, the food percentage is less because the deed percentages tend to be more. Like, for example, if you go to Lake Town,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually one of the better food fishing areas because it strongly emphasizes two deeds. One of them is the Lake Master deed, which is a huge percentage of the fish there are Lake Master related ones, and the other one are trout. And trout are, even though they are a food fish, they're also a deed fish. So the fact that it includes trout in there actually brings it up. That's one of the better post Mordor areas, but still not as good as the ones that are before Mordor. But anyway, Lake Town is one of the better ones there. And actually, the best place to fish I found that after Mordor tends to be in Lindleby. I
Okay.
guess I guess that's why the River Hobbits chose that location.
In the housing area or in the town?
I am talking. Actually, it's all of Wells of Langflood.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, technically, it's the Wells of Langflood and the Vales of Anduin. They have the same fishing table in there, and they have a pretty good fishing table. Not as good as the best places in the pre-Mordor area, but it's the best place I found it. Now, the problem about Littleby, though, is because it has so many different types of fish. It has a huge number of different types of food fish you can catch, a huge number of different types of deed fish you can get. Just about every type of fish you can think of is caught there. So your inventory is just going to disappear. If you have
Mm-hmm.
inventory problems, don't fish in Lindleby.
Fair.
So that's warning on there because you're just going to catch a huge variety of fish if you go and fish there. So that's my biggest warning on that place. But that is one of the better places to fish if you're considering post Mordor areas. And before you ask, yes, King's Gondor is on a table with post Mordor, while the classic Gondor, wartime Gondor, is in the pre-Mordor areas. So you do actually catch more fish in old Mordor, and not Mordor, I mean Gondor, in old Gondor than in new Gondor. So if you go to some place like Dol Amroth, make sure you go to the old Dol Amroth if you're going to fish there because the fishing is pretty poor in King's Gondor and in Umbar. And I know Umbar is where they're requiring you to catch the recipes in Umbar are requiring all these fish, and Umbar itself is a pretty poor fishing spot in order to get those.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's something to keep in mind on that. So, therefore, let's look at the places that are pre-mortar, because those are the areas in here, and they tend to be in various tiers in there. So I found 5 distinct fishing regions in there, and actually, where I found tend to be pretty much in line with what is given inside of the LOTRO wiki. So it doesn't seem to talk much about post Mordor eras, which is probably just as well, but the information there does seem to be reasonably in line on what's pre-Mordor in there and pre-Mordor in there. And therefore we have our first tier of area. And the reason why these tiers are important is because in the pre-Mordor area, each of these tiers has a different minimum level. And if you don't reach the minimum level that's required for your fishing area, you catch just junk. I mean, you catch some junk fish in there, but you're not going to catch any good fish or cookable fish or deed fish or anything like this. So you don't want to go to the higher fishing spots until you reach that area in there. Thus, if you are at fishing level 1, meaning you just learned how to fish, you don't want to go to Rivendell to fish because you're not going to catch anything until you hit 50. Where you want to go then are actually to the noob areas. Thus, you want to go to Erdluin, Breland, and the Shire.
Yeah.
And also to those fill in the gap areas that were that borders those areas, thus the Wildwood, which borders Breland, the Yonder Shire, which borders the Shire, of course, and Cardaland, which is next to Breland. Those areas are also in this tier 1 area. Now, there's only a 14% chance to catch cookable fish there, so it's not all that great. But seeing how if you could fish anywhere else, it's going to be 0% chance. That's where you're going to have to go.
Makes
So,
sense.
yeah, so therefore, minimum level 14% on, you get 14% catch, and your minimum level is fishing level 1. So you can fish there and catch things there just as you get started.
Yeah.
Now, when you get to fishing level 25, it is now time that you can move to another location, a better location in which to catch fish. Now, the problem is that there are only 2 areas that have this tier 2 area. One of them is the North Downs, and the other one is to the Lowlands, meaning the next levels up in there. And I found that you get about a 20% catch rate. So it's better than the Shire, but I'm saying, well, it's annoying in order to get to either of those 2 places, because if you're a relatively low level person, the places tend to be dangerous. Okay, you could probably get to Trestle Bridge. If you go to Trestle Bridge and go way down next to the river and fish down there, but that's a long I find it a long trudge, at least. I find it's a long trudge to get on down there, so I might just say, okay, I'll just stay at the Shire anyway, and say, who cares about the couple extra percentage in catching fish? Now, what I did find, though, is that it's possible to catch trout at Trestle Bridge in the Lowlands and in the North Downs. It's possible to catch trout there if your fishing level is at least 50, which, of course, that the minimum level in Trestle Bridge is 25. So you will have these 25 levels of not being able to catch trout. Now, because as soon as you start catching trout, the percentage jumps up to 27%, so it's much better. The problem is there's also a much better location that opens up when you hit 50. So that's why I usually avoid the North Downs and the Lowlands for this, because often you got mobs in the area, especially at the Lowlands area, because I tend to try to fish when I go to the Lowlands to Oscaruth. So do you have a port to Oscaruth? So you can get there quickly. How quickly can you get there? Are you level 26 and you're going to get interrupted every once in a while by the mobs there? Are you below level 26 and go get killed every once in a while by the mobs there? Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, tier 3. Now, tier 3 is the Troshals, including the Angle and Evendim. And there are plenty of safe places to fish there. I mean, you can go to Rivendell. Rivendell is probably the best place to go to in that area because it's a nice, safe place. Now that the stable masters there open up at level 20 instead of 40 as it was back in the old days. So you can get there on the stable house at level 20, and if you're level 20, you got the Gandalf Express from the Prancing Pony to Rivendell. So getting to Rivendell is pretty easy once you hit level 20. And there you have a 33% chance of catching fish. That mainly trout is the main thing that you'll be getting over there, but it also has other type of cookable fish there. So I highly recommend Rivendell once you hit fishing level 50.
Okay.
All right, and now tier 4 is at level 100.
Okay.
Forhel, Angmar, and Misty Mountains. Don't recommend. Reason is the food catch rate there is only 22%. No, it's worse than Rivendell.
That is bad.
Yeah, it is bad. I mean, it's even. Yeah.
It's almost Mordor bad.
Well, I mean, it's. I don't think it's quite Mordor bad. I mean, it's better than the Shire, but I'd rather fish in the Shire with an 18% than in Forhel with a 22%. Or, of course, even better, Rivendell. So, yes, it's just not getting good. What I found is because when you go to Forhel, even though there's a slightly better chance to catch cookable fish when you cook traditional type things, when you disregard the deed fish,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they add the what are these darters? Yes, that's when you have the darters come in, and the darters take up a good percentage of the loot table, and so happens that the way that percentages are set up, they just don't work in your favor from the point of view of food. So I would not fish it for hell unless I was just passing the time away and was happened to be there anyway. So that leads to tier 5 areas. And the tier 5 area is every place after Fork Hill and so you had, when I said Fork Hill, that included Angmar and the Misty Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, all those cold northern places. So all the rest of the places you go to, such as Eregion and everything from Eregion all the way out until you get to Ithilien. All that stuff is in one big region. That also has a minimum level 100, which is another reason why I don't recommend Forhel, because you've got this better table at there. Because it has much the same table as Forhel, except the percentages are a lot better.
Okay.
And that's what it looks like. Now, they do have sturgeons instead of darters. That's another difference in their table. First of all, the sturgeons start later. They start at 150. But even when the sturgeons kick in, you're still getting a much better catch rate. You're getting 38%. So better than Rivendell, better than everything else. And when I say 38%, I should warn you that I found a high variance when I do this. In other words, when I give these percentages, a particular session of 100 catches is give you plus minus 10% from what I'm saying here.
Okay.
But you go into all the. So as I said, any place you're expecting the quest after it. Now I should note though, and I told you earlier how fill in the blank spaces tend to take in the nature of their neighbors. That means Swan Fleet. Even though it is a level 1 zone from the point of view of character level, From the point of view of fishing, it's in the same area as Dunland,
Oh,
which means if your level 1 fisher goes and tries to fish in Hlangaran, you're not going to catch anything because its minimum level is 100 for catching fish. But once you hit that fishing level 100, you get great at fishing. It's catching wonderful catches in there. 38% best percentage I've found in any area. And of course, I'm also including Eregion, Moria, Lothlorien, Southern Mirkwood, Endwhite, Dunland, Great River, Rohan, Gondor, meaning wartime Gondor, not King's Gondor. And that includes, of course, the Gondor and Rohan housing neighborhoods.
okay.
So that's why I spent a lot of time fishing in front of my house in the Gondor fishing neighborhood, because that's the easiest place for me to get to. Because the place I'm going to get to is probably I have to go through my housing neighborhood anyway, so might as well fish there.
Fair.
And with that 38% thing, I based that on 1,000 catches. So I did a decent number of catches in order to compute this.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam said, now I got reminded of the time that I was fishing in Breelands and got attacked by a bear. After the bear was dead, I noticed that I had killed it with the fishing rod.
Right? That's hysterical.
Yeah. That's sort of the thing about it. And the problem is, of course, is that when they instituted that you can't change your weapon once you're in combat, fishing where you can potentially be put into combat is a pain. Which is why those quests that involve you fishing up a monster that you have to fight is really annoying. They're really annoying now, because
yeah.
you pull this thing out of the water. Okay, now can you change your weapon before you're officially in combat?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the best area I found that in there. So probably there's going to be some place on that list that's going to be easy to get to. If you started in Swanfleet, then you might have a port to Hlangaran. If you have a house in Rohan or Gondor, you will have a port to there. Or, of course, there's probably some place along the way anywhere around here where you might be able to fish without any trouble whatsoever. But that's where I recommend, and that's why I call the best fishing spots in it. Now, this was all inspired by a video I saw a few months back where I think the Kaleidoscape or some name like that had done a video where she thought were the best fishing spots in Middle Earth in there. And I noticed that every single fishing spot that she had near the top of her list were in this tier 5 area. And I think that the differences that she found in there were because one session is, you're going to have variation going session to session. I told you before, I was doing sessions of 100 catches. I did 10 sessions on there, and I had a 10% variance between sessions in there. So you could tell then that you'd have to do a great deal of fishing before you see all the randomness start to shake out on this. So as far as I could tell, those areas have about the same catch rate as one from the other. And if you do 10,000 catches and can get better numbers for all of them, be my guest. But I'm not doing it. I think I'm getting all these numbers all over the place. I had to do at least 2,000 or 3,000 catches from all over, combining well all over Middle Earth. So that was a lot of fishing.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. But anyway, I saw various recommendations that were in there, and one person recommended the turtle raid. Of course, that was picking up Moria's numbers, and Moria is in that between Aragian and Ithilian range in there. So Fenmarsh was Malaya Escapes recommendation there. We had another kintmate who recommended fishing in the fishing hole in that's on the border between oh boy, it says Enid White between Enid White and Swanfleet. Of course, it's picking up the fishing table of Enid White and Swanfleet, which I already said the Swanfleet has is in this post area in here. So all these good places I've seen recommended, they all happen to be from that area in there. I did see someone who actually recommended Fort Hale, but as I said, I disagree with that particular one. Either that or I have the worst luck in the world whenever I fish in Fort Hale. And that's it for my answer on the new player question. So let's head into our weekend gaming. Cinders, what are you up to?
Well, I did not do very much at all, actually. So on Sunday of last week, I worked with Pineleaf to start moving Cinderina, my lore master, through the storyline again. So we are currently hanging out in Imlad Morgul, working our way through slowly but surely. And then I played a little bit of Stardew Valley. I'm now into fall of year 2. And I'm working on getting the gold to expand my house so that I can get the wine cellar so I can get lots of money. And also I'm waiting for my rabbit to drop a lucky rabbit's foot so I can finish off my bundles.
Oh, your rabbit to drop a foot?
Yes. So the way the critters work is they will randomly drop things for you. And so the rabbit can drop either a lucky rabbit's foot or wool. And so far it's only dropped wool. But you can get eggs from the chickens and the duck, and you can get, which makes sense, and you can get milk from the cows and the goats, which again makes sense. You can get truffles from the pigs. They go out and dig up truffles. But
Okay,
that's all
makes
that the pig
sense.
does. And then the sheep gives wool. And so
Okay.
those are your options. And so I'm now waiting for it to drop. Well, the ducks will also drop duck feathers that you can use for like changing your clothing and making clothing at the sewing machine. Yeah, I'm waiting on my rabbit to drop a foot so that I can have my lucky rabbit's foot and finish off the
Sam says
uh,
poor rabbits.
right. And then I also discovered that there's an official cookbook for Stardew Valley that's being released this next week, and so I ordered that for myself because who doesn't like to have a fun way to cook up all the things that your mouth waters over in the games that you play. So it will be joining my D&D cookbook and my Hobbit cookbook, and I did put their names in for anybody who's interested. The Heroes Feast, which is Dungeons and Dragons, the official D&D cookbook, and then an Unexpected cookbook, which is an unofficial book of Hobbit cookery. So that is what I have been up to, and I am hoping this summer to get to try out some of those different meals and see how that goes. What have you been
Okay.
up to, Pine?
All right. Before I answer that,
Mm-hmm.
Sam was noting about Druid's Fire, who one time went to Mordor and was doing some fishing in the lava on Mount Doom,
Yes.
which of course is a weird place. Now, I don't know whether or not you would actually catch any fish there, and if that's something that patched out also, because now you can no longer
Um,
fish in the lava there, but I don't know whether or not it was possible in those days to catch fish in Mordor, or if when they fixed that, that's when they took out the fish in Mordor completely.
I think you actually could pull up fish there, and the other place you could pull up fish that was just really random. I want to say it was in the gold coins outside some of the houses in oh, was it
Uh,
Erebor when it first
yeah.
released, and you could go
Oh,
fishing
you
in the
can
gold
still do
coins?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Um,
during this time I did do some fishing in the Gold in Erebor, and Erebor has one of the worst fishing tables that is out there, even bad for post Mordor areas. But it is possible to catch some fish in there. But
yeah.
so let's just say that you do catch more fish than you would expect to if you were fishing in Gold.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing with the lava. It would have been really funny though if the lava would turn up cooked fish. That would be
uh,
hysterical. You go fishing in lava and your fish is pre-cooked for you and
yeah.
filleted.
Okay. You said, yeah. Apparently, Druid's Fire did catch fish there, at least goldfish at the very least.
Mhm.
No, of course, that wouldn't have been a cookable fish, but so I don't know if she actually caught any cook. But I know right now, when I went in there and did my testing in Mordor, I did not find in any place I checked in Mordor did not catch a single fish. Now I would catch things like rusty weapons, rusty this, rusty that, rusty the other thing, but but not any fish. So I was fishing in the cisterns, not in and in the rivers, not in the lava or anything like that. So let's now go into my week. And my warden spent much of the week getting caught up on missions because I had thought that I had finished up all the missions with that character, but I was remembering another version of Pine Leaf on another server.
Mhm.
So I went back in there. I was getting caught up on the missions. I think I got one mission left on if I did a whole lot of missions all over the place, including the further adventures of Bilbo Baggins, because I apparently missed that one of this character also. So that means we have that. And with there being a new mission coming out next week for Umbar, I guess that means I have two missions to do next week in order to close out all my missions that I have. And my lore master arrived in Galtrev, and I was challenged by the half orc in charge of the place to demonstrate my flogging techniques.
Mhm.
So I demonstrated my techniques to him by using my cold fish flogging techniques, or what I demonstrated to the half orc in charge there. I'm sure he appreciated it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes. And in ESO, I ran the new prologue, and I also resumed my story of Apocrypha because I still never finished that out. So let's see if I could finish that before things get too far into the future. And the goldfish was a comment for the gold in the Lonely Mountain. Oh, we said goldfish. I guess I guess he was talking not about Mordor, but about the Mountain housing. Yes, I have caught goldfish in there, but I did also catch a small amount of cookable fish in there also, which is that's a little strange on there, but all right, whatever.
Yep.
And that is my week in Lotro. But we do have a news item from News Beyond Lotro, and that is that Andy Serkis is going to come back to Middle Earth and play Golem in a new movie called The Search for Golem, or The Hunt for Golem. And this happens to be the same title as a fan made movie that came out about 15 years ago. So that's sort of an interesting matter on there that we're going to have. That we're going to have us calling it a remake of a fan made movie. Yeah, no, actually, this is actually going to be done by Peter Peter Jackson and his team are going to be doing this. I was hearing Corey Olson talking about it last night. He was during his stream, and he was wondering, okay, and why do we need this story told? This is his reaction to it.
Well, so looking at what the post on LPN's page, My guess would be that at least some of it has to do with the fact that Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit have been really high grossing. Because it looks like there's also an animated fantasy coming out.
Yes, the War of the Rohirrim, and that sounds more interesting than the Hunt for Gollum.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see on that one. I was just picturing what the Hunt for Gollum could be. Is this going to have one of Peter Jackson's trademark 20-minute long chase scenes in there? That's the impression I got, because I remember for example, in the Fellowship of the Ring, where you had that big long chase scene where the orcs are chasing the Fellowship out of Moria and all of that stuff. And I remembered that spider area or whatever that thing was in King Kong, in Peter Jackson's version of King Kong, where he added, or actually say he restored a scene that was cut out in the original King Kong movie that had been cut because they felt it was too much, and Peter Jackson decided that he was going to have it in his movie and double the length of it.
Yeah.
So, right. And then in The Hobbit, you had the barrel scene, where that big long chase scene that you had involving the barrels and all of that stuff. So I just think, oh no, is that going to be the key highlight of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. We have to see. I have to decide when it comes out. I guess 2026 or something like that, when the movie comes out, and see what I think about this. But the War of the Rohirrim, that sounds a little bit more potentially interesting in there.
Yeah. Well, and I think having it be animated, it'll be interesting to see because I feel like it's been a while since we've had an animated any kind of Lord of the Rings adaptation that's been produced by one of the major um, movie companies, right?
Yeah.
And so, with all of the advances in animation and stuff, I am curious to see how that plays out and what it's like.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. It's come a long way since 1978. I think is when the 78 or 79 when the Lord of the Rings movie that I remember coming out, when that came out. Oh boy, well, obviously a long time ago. If we're talking about 79.
Yeah, so it's definitely time
Yeah,
to
it's been
see
a
what
while.
the advances in animation do.
Right. Yeah. So yes, there've been a lot of advances in animation since then, and of course you had the Return of the King that was done by the same ones who did that animated Hobbit back in, what was that? What was it? Would that been, I guess, maybe early '80s or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
So
Before my time.
even before your time, yes, before your time.
Hmm.
So we'll see how that comes out. And anyway, let us then head on into where you could send us your emails to talk about your favorite fishing spots and why I am completely wrong on my analysis of fishing. And you can send that to podcast@lotraplayers.com. The Players Alliance has two shows. On Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we record Loach Players News and we record DDO Players News when Drac is available. You can switch for shows at loachplayers.com/live. And that's all for tonight. And this is Pilot Fuels reminding you to skirmish responsibly.